you're a manager who is really good at what you do, and you feel it's time to move up to the next level. You want growth, but you keep on getting overlooked, and you don't know why. And I can tell you that likely one of the reasons why is because when you are applying for those director level roles, your resume is showing you're a doer. You're not showing that you're ready to do those director level activities. So today, I'm going to show you how you can change your resume so that you can show you can do that job. Hi, I'm Shelley Piedmont, a former recruiter turned career coach. And I have hired a lot of people at the director level. And there are differences between what I would look for somebody to fill a manager position than a director position. And it really falls into three categories. One is their strategic abilities. Another is their financial acumen and abilities to deliver results. And the third is their cross-functional leadership. So let me give you a way to think about the difference. Let's use sports. A team has a captain. Captain is often the star player, and they're good at executing things on the field. They're the leader of the team. They're making sure people are doing what they need to be doing, and they're helping put the vision of the coach into place there on the field. Okay? They do a great job. But let's then think about, especially like in a pro situation, a general manager. They're not on the field. They're not the doers in that respect. But they have a big responsibility. They are in charge of making sure that the organization, that team, is a success. They're looking at players, who to have on the team. They're looking at the vision they have for the team, not just this year, but years down the road. They're looking at financially how the team is doing, who they need to be involved with in partnerships, things like that. If you want to be a general manager and you are a star player, you're the captain, then it's not good enough for you to show you're really good on the field. You have to demonstrate that you can do what that general manager is required to do. It is no different when you're looking as a manager to move up to a director level position. You have to show on your marketing documents, your resume, LinkedIn profile, that you can do what is needed at that director level. If you don't, you are going to stay at the manager level. And I don't want that for you. The first thing you need to think about to elevate your resume to a director level position is strategy and vision. You are no longer going to be the builder. You're going to be the architect. You are no longer the doer. You're going to be the visionary. You're going to be the person with strategy. And that's going to be reflected in how you talk about what you have done on your resume. You need to be really careful of using verbs like managed or scheduled or completed or even optimized, because they may indicate that this is around an activity and you want it to be broader than the activity. You need to talk about how you're strategizing so that it impacts the entire organization. So let me give you an example of a bullet point that is typical on a manager level resume. Optimize the quarterly planning process, reducing preparation time by 15%. So what's the problem here? Well, you're optimizing an activity, which obviously it's good for the organization. Nothing wrong with that. But it doesn't talk about strategy and how long-term it might impact the organization. That is what you need to talk about in your bullet point. So here I've revised this bullet point to showcase all of that and show that you're ready for that director level position. Restructured organization-wide business planning cycle by streamlining review stages, improving operational efficiency by 15% across departments. So thinking about your bullet point differently, now you have that strategy and vision. So let's go back to that bullet point, and I want to talk a little bit about what is showcased in that bullet point differently than in the first one. You've got an expansion of scope. You've got organization-wide in here. That implies oversight across multiple teams and departments. So that's just not managing one process. You have strategic versus tactical. You redesigned a system and a process. So that helps to show your broader abilities. It has cross-functional impact, so that was across different departments, so that does show influence. And the focus here is on efficiency and the outcomes. That's how you're going to be measured as a director, and it's not going to be about task completion. So take that and look at your resume. Is there opportunities for you to show you're more strategic and a visionary? If you found this helpful in thinking about how to position yourself, then I would appreciate it if you hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. Your support really helps. The second thing we're going to talk about is financial impact. At the director level, you have to show that what you're doing is impacting the enterprise in totality, not just your little slice of the business. So that means that you're going to have to think about in your bullet points how you can convey that what you did, what you strategized, what you architected is actually very consequential for the business. That can be either profit, it could be cost containment, or even it can be risk adjustment. But you need to be able to put your bullet point in those terms. First, I'm going to show you a bullet point that would be typical for a manager level resume. Negotiated better rates with key vendors, saving $50K last year. So what's wrong with that? Well, it's a good result. There's nothing wrong with that. But this is very transactional. It is kind of a one-time activity that did result in some cost savings, but it doesn't go to the level of what a director would do or how they would think about impact at the organizational level. So what you would want to do is rewrite this bullet point to be more inclusive in terms of what it did to impact the business as a whole. So an example would be redesigned vendor strategy and negotiations framework, delivering $50K in cost savings and improved supplier partnerships. This shows a more strategic and how this really will impact the business long term. So let's take a little bit of a longer look at that bullet point to see what aspects of that bullet point changed and why that was important. So in this revised bullet point, we have more strategic thinking involved in it over just the tactical execution of negotiation. It showed that you built a repeatable system, not just that this was a one-off deal. And we have the impact that $50K, but we also have included relationship value, which will have long-term impact. That is an example of a bullet point that elevates what you have done so that it is more of a financial plus than just the $50K that you were talking about before. The final critical difference between the manager and director level is your influence and that cross-functional alignment that you can do with not only different departments, but different department leaders. So you want to be able to showcase that in your resume. So here's an example of a typical bullet point of a manager level that really talks about cross-functional, but in a team sort of working together. Work closely with the sales team to ensure campaign alignment. The thing is, that is cooperation, and that's great, but that's not showing influence. And that is what they're going to be concerned about when they read your resume. So instead, you need to write your resume bullet like this. Architected quarterly business review process, aligning marketing and sales leadership on pipeline strategy, delivering 22% improvement in lead conversion and $2 million impact. Why this works is because you're showcasing impact and cross-functional influence. Let's go back to that bullet point. You've used the word architected, so that signals you've designed the strategy and not just facilitated meetings. You're talking about cross-functionally who you've worked with. That's the marketing and sales leadership team. So people know that those are executive level positions and not just staff. You talk about pipeline strategy. So that's what the executives really care about, not just tactics. You talked about the revenue impact. So they know that it impacts the enterprise as a whole. And then you've got decision making at the executive level. You've created the infrastructure for leadership alignment, and that's the director's role in bridging strategy and execution. So that bullet point is way more impactful for a director level position than it is for you as a manager. It's not that you don't have the ability to move into those director level positions. It's just that you're not positioning yourself properly. You have to go from a doer to showcasing that you can govern, that you can define, and you can direct, that you are the architect of business results. Think about what I've talked about today in terms of strategy, in terms of financial outcomes, and cross-functional leadership. Put that into your resume. And if you do that, I think you will have more success in getting to that next level position that you desire. If you need help with your resume or other job search strategies to get you to that director level, you can contact me for assistance. My information is in the description box.